On here.
Thank you, Curtis, for that introduction. Yeah, so the main topic of my talk today is going to be about how the white Mesa mill is going to play into the cancer therapies that are emerging these days. So to begin with, the holy grail of cancer therapy has always been, how do we kill cancer without killing healthy cells? And several immunotherapy techniques have popped up over the past few years, and one that's particularly exciting for us is one that utilizes small molecules such as artificial antibodies or peptides, which are connected to basically any sort of radioactive particle. There's applications of this already. We utilized artificial antibodies with gamma emitters to do diagnostics. We've been utilizing beta emitters as well to do therapeutics. However, the therapeutic realm could largely benefit, and then there's great potential if we could move to a different type of particle which doesn't travel through biological tissue as much and has a more meaningful impact on the cancer around. And those in particular are alpha emitting. And if you can remember from either your high school or college physics class, an alpha emitter is essentially the emission of a helium nucleus. It's large, it's charged, so it doesn't travel through biological tissue as much as other types of radiation. But the issue is, and this has essentially been the main bottleneck for the industry in developing a drug that is considered a targeted alpha therapy, is the availability of these alpha emitting isotopes. So there's over 100 different alpha emitting isotopes, but there are certain characteristics that allow these isotopes to be therapeutically, to provide advantages therapeutically. And if you go through all those, you get down to essentially probably only 3 or 4 different isotopes that are capable of being applied therapeutically to treat cancer. And the issue behind those is they're very dispersed. Several of them are artificially created, and those that are very dispersed, there is no sort of chemical means for collecting them or producing them or harnessing them. So essentially, the industry has been, sort of challenged by this particular bottleneck.
Yeah.
But the potential behind the alpha emitters is quite extensive. This is a study. Well, it's a compassionate care treatment that occurred in Germany. Compassionate care is a type of application of a drug that hasn't been approved yet, but it typically is given to a patient that is refractory to particular cancers, meaning that they've been through all the therapies that are possible, and essentially they have nothing left to that could potentially treat them. So this particular patient here, as I said, it was in Germany. This is a prostate cancer patient who had metastatic cancer that spread throughout his body, probably looking at just only a few months to live at this point. So he enrolled in this compassionate care study, and over the course of 9 months, he received 4 injections of a targeted alpha therapy. Now, this one was specifically the element actinium-225, which was attached to artificial antibody that was a prostate-specific monoclonal antibody. And after about 9 months, his cancer and all the metastases completely disappeared, and he's cancer-free. So, and you may think this is an outlier. What we're actually finding out is it's more of the norm than the outlier. We've seen there's been several studies and several early-stage clinical trials that have shown success rates or response rates that are greater than 90%. And if you want to compare this to, other immunotherapies, I mean, this is quite staggering. You've probably heard of, the T-cell checkpoint inhibitor immunotherapy that has a response rate of about 20%. Beta therapies have response rates of 20 to 30%. So So really getting alpha emitters into the clinical space is something that is vitally important for the treatment of cancer. Because of this success, there has been a boom in the clinical trials just here in the United States alone. As you can see, represented amongst the trials that are utilizing actinium-225 and lead-212, there are 15 clinical trials currently being pursued right now in the United States alone. I've also listed radium-223 because that's something that's of interest to us. Radium-223 actually represents the only FDA-approved targeted alpha therapy that exists right now. It's been recently approved for the treatment of bone metastases, and it's not a traditional targeted alpha therapy because it's not bound to a peptide or artificial antibody or anything like that. It's a alkaline earth just as calcium is, so it has affinity for bone tissue. So essentially, patients are given radium-223 dichloride as a means to treat bone metastases, and because it is treating metastatic cancer, it is not considered a cure, but it is a life extension. But again, like I said, this was a lower hanging fruit for the target alpha therapy, but it's nice to see that the ground is sort of moving with targeted alpha therapies towards clinical applications. So I represent a company called Radtran. We were established in 2017 as a means to try to close the bottleneck in the supply. And immediately we realized that the alpha supply was really bottlenecked by actually the stock material supply, the materials that are actually used to create these alpha-emitting isotopes. And that would be radium and in particular. So we, since then, we've been undergoing the development of both a method and a technology to help separate radium. We've been funded by Small Business Innovative Research grants from the Department of Energy Isotopes Program, as well as the National Institutes of Health, National Cancer Society. And in 2001, we partnered with Energy Fields to try to commercialize these therapeutic methods, or try to, let's say, commercialize the production of these rare isotopes. So you may be asking yourself, why is the mill a critical asset? How does it play into all of this? Well, if we look at the targeted alpha therapy value chain in reverse, you have patient that receives the targeted alpha therapy drug that's created by the pharmaceutical. They use their antibody, label it with an alpha-emitting isotope. Those alpha isotopes are created by companies that convert material to these alpha emitters. And then we have the White Mesa mill that provides the radium. Radium exists in uranium ores, and it exists in the monazite sands that are being brought here. So this is, quite literally a critical asset for the emergence of targeted alpha therapy. Without the mill and without there being radium suppliers, this would not, these target alpha therapies would not be possible. It would not be able to progress through clinical trials and get to the commercial phase. So if you listened to me a couple of years ago, I gave a talk on, what we anticipated on doing, when we first got started in our partnership with Energy Fuels. So I'd like to give you a little bit of a highlight. So, what we've done since then. So we have jumped through the regulatory hoops and have received approval for the production of radium here at the White Mesa Mill. And this is quite a big deal because essentially nobody else in the Western world, or probably in the rest of the world for that matter, actually has the ability or the approval to do radium production. So that's been something that's quite exciting for us. We've begun as well to develop the commercial facilities for full-scale production of radium here. And, one thing that we have, that we're getting here is we have hot cells that are on order that should arrive in early 2025. And, what a hot cell is, it's essentially something that is critical for our production. It, allows us to concentrate, purify, and package the material to be sent to pharmaceuticals. In the interim, we're looking at a construction of an R&D facility in which we're going to be able to produce smaller quantities of material to supply to clinical trials, so that they can progress. And that particular facility right now is under construction and should be completed actually within a month or so. And we expect that our first radium shipments will go out later this year. So if Energy Fields has a open house in a year from now, I should be standing up here telling you that Energy Fields has been able to supply the material that is currently now being given to patients and being, applied in clinical trials and therapeutic treatments. So we're quite at a transition phase right here that is very exciting for us. So anyway, if you have any questions, I don't know if I have time to take any, but please feel free to, oh yeah, I'll take one. Yeah, so there's a couple methods in which they could go about that. So there's compassionate care trials or administrations of targeted alpha therapies. That doesn't exist here in the U.S. You have to go to Germany or India or places like that. Otherwise, you would try to get enrolled into a clinical trial that is taking place here in the United States. At this point, those would be the two main ways of getting involved before the drugs have been. Yeah, you go to clinicaltrials.org, and that lists the clinical trials there. You could search by types of cancers or treatment method or anything like that, keywords. That's where you'd find that information out. Yes, but yeah, it's going to be located right here at the White Mesa Mill. So, all right, if there's no more questions, please feel free to pull me aside if you think of something or send me an email. My colleague Nick is also here, also wearing the rad trans shirt. So, anyway, thank you very much for your time.